Do you recognize yourself in any of these situations? You buy courses you never finish. You start projects with enthusiasm, then mysteriously lose interest. You constantly research instead of taking action. You reorganize your workspace instead of doing the work. These aren't random behaviors, they're systematic protection mechanisms. Research shows that your brain will create distractions 70% more frequently when a task threatens your current identity. Today, I'm breaking down the psychology of why you're not achieving your dreams and the systematic identity reset that changes everything. Have you ever wondered why the moment you get serious about a goal, your brain suddenly finds 1,000 distractions? Maybe you've committed to writing that book, starting that business, or completely transforming your health. And within days, you're binge watching shows or doom scrolling social media instead. This isn't random or a character flaw. It's your psychological immune system activating its defense protocols. Your brain has one primary directive that overrides even your conscious desires: maintaining a stable sense of self. Psychologists call this identity homeostasis. And it's the invisible force that keeps you trapped in familiar patterns even when you desperately want to change. Think of it as your brain's operating system, designed to maintain consistency rather than facilitate growth. This mechanism explains a startling fact. Research shows that between 80–95% of students demonstrate academic procrastination at various levels. But here's what's even more revealing. This pattern doesn't magically disappear after graduation. It follows us into adulthood, creating a systematic barrier to achievement across all domains of life. When you attempt something that contradicts your current self-image, your brain doesn't celebrate this potential evolution. Instead, it interprets this identity shift as an existential threat. If you've always seen yourself as not a math person and suddenly enroll in advanced statistics, or if you've identified as not athletic and sign up for a marathon, your brain's alarm systems activate. The result? Protection mechanisms disguised as procrastination. Your tendency to put things off isn't laziness. It's a sophisticated neurological defense system. Research reveals a direct correlation between difficulty in emotional regulation and procrastination, R equals 0.011. This means the harder it is for you to process uncomfortable emotions, the more likely you are to procrastinate. Your brain is essentially saying, this new identity doesn't compute with who I believe I am, so I'll create distractions to maintain the status quo. This explains why traditional productivity advice so often fails. Willpower techniques, time management strategies, and accountability systems address the symptoms rather than the root cause. Identity incongruence. You're trying to force yourself to take actions that contradict who you believe you fundamentally are, creating an unsustainable internal conflict. What's fascinating is that your brain creates neural resistance proportional to the perceived identity threat. The bigger the gap between who you are now and who you need to be to achieve your goal, the stronger the procrastination response. If your goal requires a minor adjustment to your identity, you might experience mild resistance. But if it demands a complete identity reinvention, your brain will fight back with everything it has. Endless distractions, sudden fatigue, urgent alternative tasks, or even physical symptoms. The most challenging aspect of this mechanism is that it operates below conscious awareness. You don't wake up thinking, today I'll sabotage my goals to maintain my current identity. Instead, you find yourself mysteriously drawn to activities that keep you safely within the boundaries of your established self-concept. This subconscious operation explains why simply trying harder or being more disciplined rarely works for truly transformative goals. You're fighting an invisible enemy using the wrong weapons. This brings us to the first major insight. The 95% failure rate in achieving significant goals isn't about lack of information or techniques. It's about an unaddressed identity crisis happening beneath your conscious awareness. Your current self and your aspiring self are in conflict, and your psychological immune system is designed to protect the status quo. This identity crisis isn't just theoretical, it's measurable. The difference between those who achieve their dreams and those who don't isn't willpower at all, but rather a neurological alignment that makes success the path of least resistance. Academic research reveals a powerful negative correlation between self-efficacy and procrastination. R equals 0.648, demonstrating that your belief in your capability literally rewires your action patterns. When you believe you can accomplish something, your brain creates neural pathways that facilitate action rather than avoidance. Notice how students with high academic self-efficacy approach challenging tasks differently. They don't avoid difficulties, they engage with them. These individuals show greater persistence when obstacles arise, employing effective strategies to overcome challenges rather than postponing them. This isn't about having superior discipline. It's about having an aligned identity where taking action feels natural rather than forced. Most people make a critical mistake in their pursuit of change. They try to modify their results without first transforming their self-concept. It's like trying to grow oranges on an apple tree. No amount of fertilizer or care will change the fundamental nature of what that tree produces. When your actions contradict your identity, you create an unsustainable dynamic where you're constantly fighting against your own psychological immune system. This explains why motivation inevitably fades. Motivation is merely an emotional response, a temporary surge of energy that cannot overpower the fundamental programming of your identity over time. You might sustain willpower for days or even weeks, but eventually your brain's need for congruence will win out, pulling you back to behaviors that match who you believe yourself to be. Your decision-making process isn't primarily logical, it's identity-based. When an action aligns with your self-picture, it requires minimal mental energy. It feels like the natural thing to do. But when that same action contradicts how you see yourself, no amount of discipline seems sufficient. The mental resistance you experience isn't laziness. It's your brain's effort to maintain internal consistency between your actions and your identity. People with difficulty regulating their emotions often turn to procrastination as a coping mechanism. Instead of facing the discomfort that comes with challenging tasks, they avoid it entirely, creating a cycle that reinforces both negative emotions and avoidance behaviors. Your capacity to process uncomfortable feelings directly impacts your ability to achieve meaningful goals. This creates a psychological catch-22. You can't achieve your aspirations without shifting your identity. Yet attempting to change that identity triggers powerful protection mechanisms designed to maintain your current self-concept. Your brain interprets identity change as an existential threat, generating resistance proportional to the perceived danger to your established sense of self. The solution isn't found in conventional approaches like positive affirmations or visualization techniques. These methods often fail because they don't address the neurological foundations of identity. Instead, the answer lies in strategic identity reconstruction through calibrated exposure experiences that gradually rewrite your self-concept at a foundational level. These carefully structured experiences allow you to demonstrate to yourself, not just tell yourself, that you're capable of being the person who would naturally achieve your goals. Research confirms that self-efficacy can be enhanced through targeted interventions that improve your attitude toward your abilities. As your self-efficacy strengthens, procrastination naturally diminishes. You're not forcing yourself to take action. Action becomes your default response because it aligns with who you now believe yourself to be. So here's what I want you to understand. That resistance you feel when approaching your dreams isn't a personal failing. It's actually an emotional regulation challenge. Your procrastination serves as a diagnostic tool, revealing precisely where your current self-concept conflicts with your aspiration. This is why monitoring and correcting your emotional responses is foundational to breaking through procrastination barriers. The solution isn't another productivity hack or doubling down on willpower. It's about emotional intelligence, learning to recognize, process, and redirect the uncomfortable feelings that arise when you step beyond your identity comfort zone. As you strengthen your ability to regulate emotions during identity transitions, you naturally dismantle the psychological barriers maintaining your status quo. The question that matters most isn't about capability, it's about transformation. Are you willing to become someone who naturally achieves what you now struggle to accomplish? Because when you resolve the emotional regulation challenges underlying your procrastination, achievement stops being something you force and becomes something you embody.